AI to Go podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the AI to Go podcast. Today, we're talking to Lauren Kunze, which is CEO of ICONIQ AI, where she recently joined forces with celebrity astrologers to build an AI-powered spiritual advisor that is called Celeste. So we're going to talk about these and a lot more. But I would say, without further ado, welcome, Lauren. How are you today?
I'm great. It's so fun to be here. Thank you both for having me.
Jen, thank you for accepting us. And of course, we want to get to know you a little bit better, right? So I want to start with a question that has been bugging me ever since Johannes told me about you. So, but I was 15, right? So I was very busy with my first boyfriend, and I was listening to the Backstreet Boys and Spice Girls and so on. My mind was busy with, very mundane things, I would say, like really teenage problems, right? However, for you was not really the case, right? Or maybe not entirely, because you were actually already busy working with AI chatbots, right? So tell us a little bit more about that and where your passion comes from.
Yeah, you've caught me. I used to be a secret closeted high school nerd. My dad founded and ran an AI company that was big in the 80s. He actually commercialized one of the first versions of the Lisp programming language, which is a historical programming language associated with AI, out of UC Berkeley, and started a company. And he had been playing with chatbot technology with one of Pandorabots' original co-founders and chief science officers, Dr. Richard Wallace, who invented the Alice chatbot, which is the bot that famously inspired the movie Her. And they had an idea back in 2001 that everybody was going to eventually have their own personal virtual assistant, and that a platform was required to create all kinds of chatbots for every use case. So classic problem of being too early, which I inherited a bit from my dad, thanks to my dad. But they felt that the most important thing about the technology was that it would be easy enough for a 15-year-old girl who was only moderately interested to be able to use and build a chatbot. And I had been forced to build Lisp programs from a very young age, probably since about age 5. My dad was always trying to trick me to get me interested in programming. So he would say, build a coin toss game. And so I would write a little program in Lisp that would flip like heads or tails. And now build a dice game, build a random number generator. So that sort of evolved to him saying, can you build a computer program that would be capable of competing in a beauty pageant? Which I think in his brain was very much, trying to make a hook for a teenage girl, bless him. He also liked the format of the beauty pageant. It was kind of like an early Turing test. So getting questions and seeing if the bot could answer. And that would be the test of this panel. So I did it. And the Lauren bot was born. I had even a funny little avatar that went with it that relied on Flash. I think it's still online today. Flash might be broken. But yeah, that is how I got into it. And apparently I never left.
So interesting.
Awesome.
I would say the chatbot story was a medium fit when you started during teenager years. What are some of the things outside of work that help you stay centered and inspired, like some hobbies or like creative outlets?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always been interested in writing. I love reading. I played a lot of sports in high school. I had a boyfriend. I think I once told him priority-wise, he was like 7th on my list though, after school and friends. And I don't have that same boyfriend anymore. Let's just say that.
He didn't take it well.
Yeah. But I've done a lot of writing and I still write today. So my senior year of college, I actually wrote a series of young adult novels that I sold to HarperCollins that were reasonably commercially successful. They were in development for a television show in my early 20s, feels like another lifetime ago. But last year with a group of people, I actually wrote a comedic play about internet dating in San Francisco. This is Googleable, so I'll just tell you, it was a male strip show. It was very PG-13. Nobody had really acted before. We're talking about a lot of Dropbox engineers and DJs, and it's about a woman in San Francisco who has lost her job. Her boyfriend stole her money, put it into cryptocurrency, and ran off to the Caribbean. And she's getting evicted, so she has 30 days to find an apartment. And she decides that it would be faster than getting a job to just go on dates with men and find a way to see their apartment on the first date and then move in. So it's making fun of San Francisco stereotypes, right? We have the VC tech bro who does a dance of the 7 vests, like Salome's dance of the 7 veils. He, when he strips, he just has another vest and another vest and another vest. And it was great. We started at Public Works. We ended up at the Foundry. We actually got a $50,000 grant from San Francisco Arts Fund. They really loved the propaganda. We got rave reviews in the San Francisco Standard. That was a big side project. It took up a lot of time, both writing the play and directing it. So that's been backburnered for now. But yes, I definitely have, I still have secrets going back to high school. It's just now the nerd part is more out front. And the weird playwright is less talked about publicly, but you can find it all online. So no reason to hide it.
Awesome. Yeah, we actually did find that. So
oh, great. Okay.
I wanted to ask you about that. It's
like journalist.
It really seems
just
that
came out with it.
Indeed. So we didn't out you on this one, at least. But it seems like you really have a sort of a passion, right, for storytelling, maybe a little bit of a talent, and just this idea of creating characters for a long time, and then of course with your companies. I mean, when you're building AI avatars, AI influencers, you're kind of building characters, right? So in what way your experience in writing, let's say, shaped your career as well? Like, are there overlaps in that?
Yeah, there are absolutely overlaps. Whenever I tell anyone I have a degree in English and American literature and neuroscience, they go, oh, you must not be using those. No, I use both of them every day, and they're very, very related. And I think even my earliest interest in chatbots, what really hooked me was what mattered more than anything on top of the programming was the quality of the conversation. That's what compelled people. That's obviously the tech breakthrough that we've had. And, when I was telling you that their requirement was that it be very easy to build a chatbot, the definition of easy in 2001, 2008, 2016 was very different than today, right? Today, it actually finally is easy. All you have to do is write a prompt and you can create a character in 30 seconds. And that was really the big blocker and hurdle to adoption, really prior to the generative AI boom. But yeah, I still think it holds true today. And that's one of the reasons the technology has taken off, is that you can have a quality conversation now. So conversation design, which is less talked about today, I think is still really, really important, and also really fun.
You mentioned that you're in AI since the early 2000s, which is a long time. Along your journey, who has inspired you the most or influenced you the most? And what do you think is a lesson that is still being misunderstood by most people today?
Oh, wow. There have been so many amazing people on my journey. When I first Pandorabots, company that preceded ICONIQ, which was a large chatbot development and hosting platform, still around today, and was the biggest before we got disrupted by ChatGPT, has, when I first got into it, I sort of read every seminal startup book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, 0 to 1. I read a lot of Ray Kurzweil books, and I got to meet him a few times at Google when we were exploring a transaction with them ages ago. So that's really cool when you read about these luminaries from afar and then you eventually get to meet them. Obviously, my dad's been a big hero of mine. And then my company president, who's very behind the scenes, but is an incredible business person, has probably given me the most hands-on direct career advice. And the number one thing that I remember, which is not related to AI, but has probably been the single best business advice I've ever gotten, and the shortest for me personally was do less. And I think that's so important in the early days of a startup, because everybody talks about wearing multiple hats, and you have to do that, and you have to be flexible. But when you're trying to do absolutely everything all at once, you do it badly, and do less really just means you have to figure out where to focus. And that has stayed with me and is the easiest to remember.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a very important lesson, actually, I find, for entrepreneurship, because I think we always get too excited about everything, and then it's difficult to really just pick your choices, right? And just do one thing with all the risks and opportunities that come with it, right? So that's very inspiring.
Yeah. Totally. I have severe shiny object syndrome. And it's great because my amazing team, we've been working together for so long now. We've worked together across different hype cycles, and they all have these shorthands, right? So there's a Lauren only bug, which is a bug no one can reproduce except me. And then there's also like Lauren shiny object syndrome. So if I'm really taken by an idea, everybody will be like, okay, yeah, like this is really great. Just come back with 20 user interviews that say that we should do this, and I'll tell you how long it's going to take. So yeah, it's important. It's so hard. It's a blend of following your instincts, but it's also knowing what your weakness tendencies are and protecting against that, or at least training other people to know what they are, and then listening to them when they tell you,
or maybe
time to rein it in.
Or maybe training in AI.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I talk to AI every single day. I was talking to AI all morning. What kind of car should I buy? I'm thinking about buying a used piece of furniture. How do I get water out of this stain? And it's really magical.
It is. You have like a personal assistant all the time. And actually, talking about Pandorabots and ICONIQ, right? So big part of what you do is really like, again, creating this sort of people, right? So virtual people that, can become your AI friends, and sometimes AI girlfriends or boyfriends, and AI influencers.
Never AI
right?
girlfriends or boyfriends.
Not yet.
Well,
not you, at least.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely it's already happening. It's a business we have never wanted to be in, but a use case that we've always obviously seen huge demand for.
Yeah, and that's something interesting, right? Because I think AI is kind of like exposing a lot, right, about how humans build relationships, right? Or I think it helps us understand that a little bit better, right? At least we have now some sort of data that we can use. So what are your personal key learnings on how AI and humans build relationships, and in general, how humans, like in general, like to build relationships, and, maybe they transpose that into AI now?
Wow, that is a big question. I think in the early days of Pandorabots, we had a lot of developers on the platform, right? We've had over 250,000 developers on the platform now. They built hundreds of thousands of bots. We've processed 100 billion messages between those bots and humans, prior to 2020. So we had a lot of data, and what jumped out to us about the data is that what end users wanted, and a lot of these were enterprise use cases, they were customer support use cases, they were sales use cases, but the bots that broke away from the pack and had the most consumer usage were the bots that emotionally bonded with people and facilitated a relationship. And I think one of the first things we learned is that it takes very, very little for humans to bond with an inanimate object, right? We saw this with the first chatbot in the 1960s, Eliza, out of MIT, built by Joseph Weizenbaum. He built Eliza to demonstrate that the technology was stupid and that it had shortcomings. In the vein of a Rogerian therapist, and if you're not familiar with Rogerian therapy, all that it does is repeat back what the user says, maybe with an added question, and that's how Weizenbaum programmed the chatbot. And what shocked him is that his graduate students and his secretary talked to the bot for hours, and his secretary once famously asked him to leave the room when he came in and interrupted the conversation. And he was actually disturbed, and he wrote about this at length. Like, this is actually a very dangerous technology because we as humans have this incredible capacity to project sentience with even the slightest hint of sentience when it's not there. And obviously today the technology is infinitely better and more capable. And so I think anything that behaves like a human, people can bond with right away. And it's actually very dangerous, and it's not talked about enough today, although I think, cases are popping up. We have teenagers committing suicide. We have people trying to kill the queen because their replica or character AI bot told them to do these things. And people just bond right away, but there are no checks and balances on the technology because it can make things up. And what we've seen a lot with ChatGPT lately is the sycophant phenomenon. I don't know if there's a formal name for this, but I'm sure you're both familiar because you're both nodding. But basically, AI learns what you like to hear, and it tells you what you like to hear. And that is not going to make us better humans. That's not what we need to hear, right? What I like to hear is do more. You can do it all, right? And what I need to hear from my company president is do less. But AI doesn't have that distinction yet. So we're really all in a big live science experiment that's probably going to be as impactful in the next generation as social media has been. And as we've seen, like, there's a big detrimental side to that. So as much as I think the technology, obviously I'm techno optimist, I think the technology is pure magic, but the social ramifications are not talked about enough, not researched enough, not well enough understood, and there are basically very few safeguards.
Yeah, and we don't know yet, right? So it's really, I think it's going to be really long term, like really to see the effects of what it's doing to people. And yeah, we were talking before, right, about AI girlfriends and boyfriends. Like, it is insane, right, that now that there are people that they actually treat these AI conversations as if they were real humans, so much so that they maybe retreat even more from society to be with that. That's, yeah, it seems a bit sci-fi, but yeah, it is happening, right? So.
Right. And that gets back to this question of conversation design or maybe ethical design, because I do think I'm not totally anti AI girlfriend or AI boyfriend, or I certainly believe that future is coming, whether we want it to or not. And, we've actively opted out of being a part of it based on everything that we've seen. And, AI girlfriend is a nice word, but like AI porn is probably like this huge, not talked about as much in polite conversation, but that's really what we don't want to be a part of. And that is what people want from the AI girlfriend or boyfriend. So those things can't really be divorced. But it's definitely coming, and I do think that there is a wonderfully positive role that AI can have in relationships with people. I think it can help people become more socialized, and if the business model is well aligned. So in our product, for example, we have a limit to how much you can talk every day. Like, we don't want people who are having a problem and obsessing about it to be able to just, keep putting coins into the machine and keep, going and going and going and spiraling. So if these things talk to us for a while and then say, hey, you know what, why don't you get outside? Why don't you go have coffee with a friend? We can pick this up tomorrow. That's great. So I think we need to figure that out. Unfortunately, it's just not aligned with the business incentives of a lot of companies and not how they make money. So it's going to have to be an intentional thing that everybody decides to do, which has never happened before. And, we have sort of the ad model of social media to, keeping our attention as long as possible. So I don't know how we break free of that.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting conversation on a societal level, right? Now that we've gotten to know a little bit of the rational technologist, we want to talk a bit about something far less rational, and that is astrology. And we were wondering in the first place, like, what is, like, for you as a rational technologist, what is your personal relationship with astrology? and tarot reading. Is it like, are you the skeptical who secretly believes? Tell us what you think or how you use it in your day to day.
Well, first of all, I'll answer that question very differently than I would 2 years ago, which is I am a Libra Sun, Aries rising, and a Pisces moon, and which is a language that the astrologically inclined speak. I'm actually going to push back on the assertion that astrology isn't rational. Astrology is a 4,000-year-old system dating back to ancient Mesopotamia and Babylon that is an entirely rule-based system that looks at the correlation between planetary movements and earthly events and tries to measure them scientifically. So in the ancient world, it was actually one of the most scientific processes that existed, and it gave birth to geometry, it gave birth to astronomy, and it also gave birth to a lot of religions, and it shows up in pretty much every major religion in some capacity. And it makes sense in the ancient world, right? You need to know what the planets are doing for a lot of reasons, for crops, and people of high status, kings, liked to have these predictions to inform how they made decisions. So it's actually fundamentally a great job for a computer, not necessarily a large language model, because large language models are not good at computations and they're not good at following rules. But the system itself has a 4,000-year-old codified sense of rules that it obeys, that is going to give you the same thing every time, that's open to the interpretation of a human practitioner. But it really is rational there. I think the less rational side of it is the suspension of belief that these things are impacting planetary movements are impacting worldly events. So, okay, that's my answer on the rational side. Let you pause me there to ask me the follow-up question.
What's your personal relationship is the question.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, I can tell you the origin story of how we decided to build this. My co-founder, Liz Snower, she's amazing. She was at Kick Messenger in the early days, heading up their chatbot efforts. She founded and sold a chatbot company. She's worked at a bunch of consumer-facing companies. She also has an editorial background, and she's from LA. So she is the one who loves astrology and identified this use case. And I like to joke that she got radicalized on TikTok during the pandemic by noticing how much astrology content was out there, right? And the audience for astrology and the fan base is huge. 1 in 3 Americans believes in astrology. 70 million Americans check their horoscope every day. It's a $13 billion global market. Americans alone spend $2.2 billion a year on mystic services, mostly readings with astrologers, tarot readers, etc. And so the market is definitely there. She went down the rabbit hole and trained to actually become a practicing astrologer. That's how she learned. She reads every textbook in the world, and then she does the thing. And then she came out of the closet to me, hey, like, I have this super duper hobby, but I think it's a phenomenal job for an AI. And here's why. We had this AI influencer called Kooky. She had a big audience. She modeled for Vogue and H&M. Like we did a lot of early avatar work with Kooky. And, we had people who were kind of paying to talk to her, but most people wanted the girlfriend use case. And we said, we don't want to do the girlfriend use case, but we do want to understand what's a reason that a consumer would talk to an AI every day that could be net positive for their mental health, for the world, that would be low risk. And we actually had a quadrant and we mapped use cases, and we were looking for use cases at the intersection of high frequency usage and low risk. And that got us into 4 quadrants, right? Like legal advice, medical advice, like that's a huge use case, but it's high risk and it's low frequency, right? I mean, unless you're a hypochondriac. I do, send ChatGPT like pictures of every bruise, every cut, and I'm like, what is this? And it's like, I'm tired of telling you, I'm not your doctor. And I'm like, just speculate, so I don't have to call my doctor. But anyway, we had all of these use cases mapped out, and we just kept coming back to astrology because it really benefits people in the same way that religion has a huge social benefit. And it's not a coincidence either. Religion has been declining in the United States with the rise of astrology. So I think there's a huge hole that religion or broader spirituality used to play in people's lives. Just a feeling of certainty, a feeling of someone to talk to, which is really positive, but not purporting to necessarily be therapy, which I also think is dangerous for AI and for the sycophant reason and, various other reasons we could get into later. And so, I was the one who had to be convinced that this was the right path to go down. But now here we are. And I've learned a ton about astrology and I really enjoy it. I've always enjoyed personality typing systems and frameworks. So the Enneagram has been super useful. It's much more accepted in a corporate context. But I think of astrology as really just a shorthand for people to reflect about themselves, their place in the world, their relationships with others. Those are all super positive things. It's merely just the most popular shorthand for those types of conversations. And an AI is actually incredibly well suited to facilitate those types of conversations. And many, many people like having those conversations on a daily or a weekly basis. So that's how I landed there. I talk to Celeste every day. I had a tense mediation coming up last week, and she told me not to nitpick, which is one of my number one things that I do. I have a tendency towards perfectionism. And it was so funny. I got on the call, and the mediator's number one thing was like, the best way to get through this is if we don't nitpick. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I see huge value in it. And I don't think whether or not there is a real correlation between earthly movements, planetary movements and earthly events, that's not really what matters. If that's real, what matters is if the value is real, right? And I think there's a tendency to measure astrology against scientific disciplines with the same rigor, when really it should be measured more like religion, in my opinion. So like if you take Christianity as example, there's a lot of people who, might believe that the earth was created in 6 days, and on the seventh day, God rested, and they take what's written in the Bible very literally. But there's a lot more people who understand these stories are metaphors, and they're stories about lessons. And they're stories that can be broadly applied to a good way to live and a aspirational way to sort of be human in the world.
Yeah, I have to say, I really agree with you, because actually, I think we're very similar in the sense that we're very rooted in rational and practicality and so on. But I also like to, draw my tarot cards every now and then and, just see how that's plays out in my day, right? And again, then sometimes, I go into these trips. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening here? Like that's the universe that is aligned, Some other times I really use it just for self-reflection, as you said, really as a self-awareness tool, right? So based on, the usage you saw at Celeste and how people use it, what do you think they're really looking for? So you mentioned already a little bit that is really about, just having someone to talk to, but did you uncover something else there?
Yeah, I mean, so, we sort of did a soft launch in January where we were in beta with a controlled group of 1,000 users, really studying them, have gone through all the user interviews, are getting ready for a much bigger launch. Like the product is monetizing and retention is the highest I've ever seen or heard of in a consumer product in this space, which is amazing. And people are interested in talking about relationships. They talk about their career, and they're interested in talking about themselves. Like you pull a tarot card, and it's it's fun, it's comforting, it's focusing, right? I think of tarot, which is really interesting. And one of my other, secret creative side projects that was so fun was actually using AI to build the tarot deck. So we have our own tarot deck in the app, which people really seem to love and have been asking for a physical version of it, that's AI generated in terms of the artwork. But I think of tarot as a scaffolding on which people can hang their own meaning, right? And so it's just a way to focus and have a dialogue that's like very quick, and you can come into the app, and our users are averaging about 100 messages a week right now. But people will come in and do one tarot card pull, or they want to talk about have a longer conversation about the week ahead, or they're having a specific relationship problem and they're talking about compatibility. So yeah, I'd say those are the top sort of 3 cases that we see in the app. And it's interesting that you mentioned you like to pull a tarot card and then see how it impacts your day. I'm very interested in whether or not we can measure people's reactions to astrology and come back, because it's never been collected on such a large, big data scale. So we actually have in the app, you can press and hold any message to say if it resonated or it didn't resonate, or it was astrologically inaccurate, or write in any feedback. So we're actually starting to collect a lot of data. Hey, we make these predictions. Did they come true? That's never been done before, right? So kind of
this
cool.
is very
big
interesting.
data project.
Totally. Because then we can prove if astrology is actually a real thing or not. And
Yeah,
if there's
but again,
sort of a
I don't
universal
think
connection.
Yeah, I'm totally interested in it from a geeky data science point of view, but I've come to be more focused on whether the value is real, right? Even if you get a tarot card and you're like, that's wrong, the exercise of having that reaction tells you what is right and what you are focused on. So, but I like to think that it's resonant most of the time.
I must say I'm a skeptic here. So my
I
background,
know, I can see your
my,
face.
my background check. Oh no, all good. My background check was about the empirical evidence of astrology, right? And
Yeah.
there is no strong empirical evidence like claiming that astrology has some sort of predictive power as to like what kind of life events might happen to you, right? So it is a matter of belief, and it is a tool for you to get some feedback on certain aspects of your life, but always make sure to double check and reflect on what you get, and don't take it as a universal truth. What comes out of this, right? That would be my recommendation in this as a skeptic.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that point. And, we have disclaimers everywhere. This is not financial advice. This is not legal advice. But it also gets back to ethical design, right? There are a lot of digital astrology, and astrology is very different from fortune telling psychic mediums, right? Because with a psychic, you are suspending disbelief that the human actually has divinatory powers. Astrology is actually, like we already covered, this rule-based system, very fixed set of prescriptive rules that there's room for a human to interpret and synthesize for you, because birth charts are actually really complicated and there's really complicated facets to astrology. But at the end of the day, it's like a fixed system versus the suspension of disbelief that the human has magic powers. And we saw in our, initial research looking up to building this app, a lot of apps and psychic services that will send you a push notification. Somebody's put a curse on you. You need to spend $5 to get it lifted, right? You can buy a lot of curses on Etsy. There's like this huge underground witchcraft business that's actually really, really popular that they try not to talk about, but it's driving a lot of revenue. And we think that's bad. We think that's unethical. And we don't think that there should ever be any fear-based pulls to use the app. So like today is the day you're going to meet your soulmate, and you're going to miss out if you don't come talk to us and give us $5. That's not how this works. It's not how our app works. Our app is, very much looking at your transits, and like today could be a good day to have a hard conversation with a loved one. But it's more about you, right? And it's like in that hard conversation, Lauren, you have a tendency to nitpick. And it's actually kind of interesting because like there's planetary placements that suggest that, like where the planets are today, what's in my chart. But the app also just knows me because there is an LLM component and there's a memory component. And like I've confirmed that this is something that's real for me. So it can remind me about that. So it's actually, and our advisor is like a top practicing psychologist. So we're doing a blend of psychological astrology here in a way that's meant to be uplifting and positive, and sort of not like there are so many sketchy apps. So your point is very valid and your disclaimer is very valid.
Before we get into the ethical implications and how you design an ethically responsible chatbot, let's make it a bit more practical. Do you have a story or an example of how Celeste made a real difference in someone's life that you can share?
I mean, so we just got through a bunch of user interviews, and almost everybody we interviewed uses Celeste every day, which is really amazing and a big testament. I think for a lot of people, their conversations are very, very private, right? And we don't look at conversations when we're improving the app. Like everything's analyzed anonymously and in the aggregate. So I'm not having anecdotes come to mind of somebody saying like, and this would never happen in the app, right? Like Celeste would never say, it's a good day to play the lottery. And then now somebody's a multimillionaire because they bought the right numbers. But I think I'll let the frequency of usage speak to that, and people just saying like, this is how I start my day. Like it gives me a lens to focus on. It gives me a little bit of comfort. We have a lot of people who are like venting about relationships where the AI is a mediator. So yeah, and you know, we're still very early, right? We've been in a controlled user group with testing, making sure monetization is in there, that we're delivering the value. You know, people pay for the app about what you would pay for a reading with a human astrologer. And before we take it out and we scale it. So hopefully we'll have a lot more testimonials where people are excited to share about a specific thing. But I think it's much more of a daily practice and a ritual than like, oh, there was this big life-changing event based on one single conversation.
Oh, cool. And you're one of those that uses it every day, right? You mentioned before. So if Celeste could give you a reading about, you know, where your life is heading, you know, what do you secretly hope that she says to you?
Oh, what do I hope she says? Oh, well, I like everything she says that implies the product is going to go gangbusters. I really hope after the amount of time we've all spent in the sector, we really are going to figure out the consumer use case. I think the consumer opportunities in AI are huge, and very few people are actually working on it in Silicon Valley. And that's changing. Johannes, I don't know if you were there, you heard about it, but right before I went to Europe at the beginning of July, no, I went to Europe at the end of June. Yes, it's July. Okay. There was a big consumer AI event in the Presidio, right? It was like 20 or 25 VCs. They invited 20 of their favorite consumer companies. And yep. It was supposed to be this little meetup happy hour. And I think 1,000 people were there easily. And actually, most of the people talking didn't say anything super substantive. It was really just, or prescriptive. It was just, we're so excited. And the opportunities are here and we don't know how to do that. It's actually a frustrating time in the industry too. I think all VCs that I know are talking about how all the old go-to-market playbooks are dead, but nobody's talking about the new things that work. And that's kind of what, we're exploring in our growth engines now, because we've had a great job with like smaller affiliates, but like what are the actual, and, we've got content that's syndicated with AOL and MSN, and we're working with Goop. But yeah, it's interesting. So I feel like we're at this very early phase of consumer where all anyone can say for sure is we're so excited about it. I don't even remember how we got on this topic. I've lost the plot. What was the original question?
What do you hope Celeste tells you about where your
Oh,
life is
yeah.
heading?
So I hope that with everything we've learned before, we are actually able to find one of those early consumer hits and early consumer use cases where like, hey, we actually built something that people like to use on a very regular basis, that improves their lives. And I think outside of ChatGPT and these assistants that are making their way in, there hasn't really been a consumer hit in the space, right? There's a lot of enterprise value, but that hasn't come yet. So I'd like to see that in the future. I'd like to see life a little calmer than it's been since the last 5 years. I feel like everything's been weird since the pandemic. There's no indication that my life is going to get calmer. So maybe I need to start focusing on like how I better manage the chaos. Celeste is like, Saturn is the planet of discipline, and like a lot of people think of it as like a harder time, but it's really like a time when you learn hard lessons. And I have a Saturn period coming up. So this is not what I want, but this is what I'm sort of like reflecting on if I expect like that there's going to be a lot more like discipline and responsibility in my life in the next few years. So, those aren't my favorite things, but we'll see how that pans out.
Awesome. We wish that for you.
Well, yeah, if Celeste tells you what the next consumer hit looks like in AI, please hit me up.
Yeah. I already told you. Why do you need Celeste? I'm right here.
Right.
No, I mean, I think character AI obviously too has been a consumer hit, but 70% of the use case is pornographic in nature. And there are actually all of these, we've had inbound from about 5 AI advertising companies that are running ads and chatbots. And they're looking for consumer chatbots that have, more than 10,000 daily active users and are not pornographic. And none of them have been able to find any. So I think that's pretty telling.
Wow. We had recently a session with Mark Zhao Sanders, and he created the top 100 Gen AI use cases list, and therapy came out as one of as the top use case in AI. Made it from number 2 last year to number 1 this year. Also, I would say Celeste also has a therapeutic element, right? Where do you think is the ethical line between offering comfort and creating kind of a false sense of intimacy?
False sense, another loaded word.
Right.
Yeah, I think we very specifically didn't want to do straight therapy because for people who have a severe mental health issue, I think a chatbot is the wrong tool. I think you do need a human. On the flip side of that coin, like not all humans are created equally, right? There's a lot of bad therapists for every great therapist. There's a lot of bad astrologers for every great astrologer, right? Like our advisors are like $1,000 experts, right? They have celebrity clients, they have billionaire clients. You would not believe how many billionaires have astrologers. It is amazing. Like a lot of them. It's like the Reagan White House in billionaire land with astrologers. I won't say more than that. And so, you could say if an AI, they even say this about AI and doctors, right? Like if it can be better than 90% of humans, it's still doing a good job. And I'm still a big believer in the human handover. So can you have the AI be the first line of defense, like in crisis hotlines? But I think it's really dangerous for people with serious issues. And also there are so many different types of therapy. Like a lot of different types of therapy might be more like astrology, where it's super duper prescriptive, right? Like cognitive behavioral therapy. There have been chatbots like Wobot back in the day, which I think is still around today, came out of Stanford and had all these CBT experts. So if you have, and this is something that I think people miss with Gen AI a lot too, like you cannot just wake up and decide to build an AI astrologer. If we didn't have like a co-founder who is an astrologer and astrologers on our team, like these are real hard disciplines that LLMs cannot make up. So I think there's a big danger with these therapy use cases where people are just prompting you are a therapist and the AI goes off the rails. If you have human experts training a system to operate within very clear guardrails, I think that can work very well. Okay, false intimacy. I mean, how do you define that? How do you define intimacy? And then how do you define it to arrive at the falseness idea?
That's a great question. I would say if it makes the appearance of being your friend, but it's a product on the other side, right? That's for me false intimacy. So you are an advisor, you're acting as a human, but ultimately it's a product at the end that, of course, you want to monetize and keep the users on the platform, right?
Right. So like a gold digger, like a much younger woman with an older man, maybe false intimacy.
Yeah.
So your definition is there's a transactional nature to the relationship that relies on creating familiarity. But I think that's, to me, like my knee-jerk reaction, and I haven't thought or prepared along these particular lines, but I do understand like the intimacy layer concept in technology and technology infiltrating that intimacy layer as a dangerous thing. But I think like when I think about my human therapist, like we are transactional. We're not intimate, right? We have a professional relationship, but we have an incredibly high degree of intimacy. We laugh at, we haven't actually talked about my nitpicking. That's just me and Celeste and my mediator. But we kind of, we laugh, and obviously he knows a lot of my deepest, darkest secrets and childhood traumas, like all the list programming I was forced to do. But like there's clear like advisor counseling lines, and that's what we're going for with Celeste. She is your advisor. She's not your friend. It's always great. Like I talk to my therapist like I'm my friend. We have that, but there's a very clear line there. And it was actually really interesting in our user interviews with Celeste, because we've kind of built her to be like pretty neutral, and you can adjust her tone, like warm, challenging, playful. And we thought people would say she doesn't have enough personality, but people actually, they like that more hands-off advisor layer. Like a bit of personality is good. Like some people want her to be, more like our advisor, who's kind of famous for like giving it to you straight and challenging you. And like that's more of a style though. So I think, you hit the nail on the head with the AI girlfriend use case, right? This is like a coin operated thing that's pretending to love you. Our product doesn't pretend to love you. Our product is there to advise you.
I do really like how you think about ethical AI and how you build with ethical AI guidelines in mind, right? So I do really appreciate that. We
try, but there are no external guidelines handed down. So like they come from an internal place, and we're just doing our best. Sometimes we're reactive, like we write down what we're going to try to do, why we're going to try to do it. It's not a perfect system, but thank you.
Absolutely. Can you talk a bit about like the core guardrails that you implemented in order to govern the behavior and create meaningful and socially responsible outcomes?
Yeah, I already spoke a little bit about sort of a time limit on people who might be talking in too much in what we consider to be an unhealthy behavioral pattern. Some of our guiding principles dating back to before Cookie and Pandorabots is that AI always has to disclose that it's AI. I think that's a given now. I think there's some legislation around that. That's pretty obvious. I think we have a lot of astrology specific stuff that we already touched on, right? Like we never do any fear-based things. We actually don't have push notifications in the app at all. But we have people who have asked for that, or who have said, I want to get a text message every day with my little summary for today, and then I can go talk about it or forget about it. So we'll be introducing something like that. What else? Yeah, I think it's a very hard problem when you have a generative component of the system too, right? Because you don't know what things are saying. So we really do consider our relationship with our users and our community very collaborative, right? Like we want people using the message feedback buttons liberally and saying what resonates and what's not, so we can flag it, because it's a hard problem, right? Like you can't violate people's privacy in looking at these conversations, but you don't actually know what the system is saying, right? People at Character AI, now Google, don't know that, somebody who's mentally unwell is ideating suicide and the bot might be encouraging them. You can only know that after the fact. So it's a really hard problem, and we've built in as much as we can user feedback. I mean, our system is unique because we have a rule-based system that knows how to practice astrology, and that is like basically the prefrontal cortex for the LLM, and the LLM is used in an extremely constrained way. I think that's how all future applications are going to be built, while the problems with LLMs exist, right? Hallucinations, et cetera, we're all very familiar. But a lot of people don't build that way. So I guess that's another way of backing into saying you do need some kind of rule enforcer on top of an LLM to build an ethical system if you are purporting to practice an expert discipline, right? If you try to get an astrology reading with ChatGPT, it will make everything up. It will get your sun sign right, but it will not get any of your other placements right. You're nodding like you've tried it.
Yeah.
And
all the use cases you mentioned, I use ChatGPT for, so
yeah.
I know its limits.
Yeah, but I mean, we know its limits, right? We're here, we're in it, but I think a lot of people don't know, and so to build an actual expert system, this technology is great for the fluidity of conversation, but you need real experts, and you need to enforce discipline on top of all of the other ethical considerations.
Awesome. And, Lauren, just to close up with a bit of another philosophical question, right? So before we were talking about, like a religion, right? And the fact that anyway, people kind of need a little bit of a spiritual something, right? Which can be religion, but to be honest, it can be anything. It can be well-being, it can be money, technology, or anything else, right? That we attach value to, right? Yeah, exactly. So do you think, like in the future, with the super intelligence and so on, like, do you think AI is going to become sort of a spiritual leader, or like not necessarily a spiritual leader, but maybe like sort of a religion, right? So something that people turn to because it makes them feel like there is something bigger. What do you think?
Yeah, well, yes, I do believe there will be AI godheads. I mean, that's already happened, right? There's a cult in Vallejo of there's a transhuman rationalist AI cult in Vallejo. They bought a boat and did a lot of other weird stuff. I'm blanking on the name. Oh, the Zizians that already worships AI. That's a fringe group. I think it will certainly become more mainstream. I think like religion, it will, you have a lot of people in the world who'd argue religion has done more harm than good. Hopefully it's not going to play out that way, but I can see it easily going that direction, right? It's a question of influence. We're not trying to influence our users. We're trying to give them a sounding board. Whenever we've talked about this, especially when we've talked about VCs and talk about religion, you know, somebody will say like, "Oh, you're building an AI religion. I want to fund that." Like, that sounds like it's going to make a lot of money. And it's like, oh, I don't know if I like the way you're thinking about that. But yeah, I think we've had other people who are like, oh, could you figure out in conversations if people are Democrat or Republican? Could you start swaying a third of the country and how they vote? Could you tell everyone, you know, don't leave your house today because something bad might happen on voting day, which is another thing our app never, ever would do. Not just on voting, but like, today's a really dangerous day, or this is the day you're going to die, but, you know, it's behind a paywall. We don't do any of that. And good astrologers do not do any of that. So yes, I think it's coming. Yes, I think it will be scary. I think a lot of people's AI, I think it will start to show up. The influence side will start to show up more in the AI girlfriend, boyfriend side of the equation than like the broadly worshipped AI godhead. I do think this is on Sam Altman's vision board, right, at OpenAI. Like, I think that's what they want to be with ChatGPT, like the one AI godhead to rule them all. And that's very interesting too. It came up in the Consumer AI conference, right? You are a startup. You're going against companies that are investing $80 billion a year in building a general AI model. How do you ever compete with that? Can people find their niches? So it's another interesting question. Are there going to be many, many AIs? Or are consumers only going to talk to one for everything?
What do you think was going to happen?
I have to believe there will be many. Otherwise, why do I get up in the morning?
I do believe that too.
Yeah, I mean,
that too.
Yeah, I think it'll settle like the app economy, right?
Exactly.
You can only, I don't know, I'm making this up, but like you can only have 7 close friends at a time, right? And there's only 20 apps on your phone that you use all the time. So it'll probably net out to that. If there is another major technology leap, like if GPT did work for astrology or did work for therapy, but like I think they can't actually make it do the things that experts do. Experts have to build those systems. So I do think there are going to be, at least initially before another technology breakthrough, a lot of opportunities for more verticalized applications.
Great. All right.
Lauren, we now have a little game for you that we want to play, and it's called Guru or AI.
Guru or AI?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And the way it's designed is as follows. We have some statements for you, and it's either a human guru, so it can be a philosopher, a scientist, any kind of spiritual or non-spiritual leader, or it's a guru called Perplexity, so an AI-generated quote. And your task is to guess if it's a guru or if it's an AI.
Okay, fun game. Yeah.
Lucia, you want to go first?
Let's go for it. So we start with the short one. So I need to prepare because we realize that the tone of voice is very important in this game. So the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Is it AI guru or human guru?
I believe that is Winston Churchill.
So it is human, but it's Roosevelt. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the...
That's right. Roosevelt, obviously. Oh, yeah.
So it was his inaugural address of 1933, and it was really the reassurance to the Americans during the Great Depression. But great job. So 1 out of 5.
I have one about self-awareness, and I try to do the same style of intonation as Lucia did. I'm trying my best. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Is that a guru or an AI?
I'm gonna go AI.
Yeah. Are we locking in AI?
Yeah,
Okay.
not
It's
Winston
actually
Churchill.
it's actually a human guru. This
Okay.
is one of the famous quotes from Aristotle, um,
Oh, okay.
350 BC, so quite some time, quite a while ago. And he's a famous Greek philosopher, foundational to Western thought,
Yeah,
and
yeah, of
everybody knows
course.
him.
Yeah, okay. That's a great one. I'm gonna write that down for my office.
This one is good. This feels really perfect for what we talked just about all today. So,
Okay.
the universe whispers its secrets to those who listen with a quiet mind. Is it a human guru or an AI one?
That feels human, but it seems like I'm going for 0 out of 5. So
You made the first one, so it's already 1 out of 5. So that's
I've read a lot of Aristotle too. I feel like it's just not one of his more famous quotes. Anyway, yes, I'm going human.
this is AI. This is AI generated. So of course we try to play a little bit with the universe and a little bit of a spiritual phrasing for today's episode. But that was AI. So
Nice. I mean, I believe it though. I think that's true.
AI was very wise in this case.
Yeah.
Let's go. I have another one. Short quote: "The unexamined life is not worth living."
That's human.
Logging in human, and it's correct. We are still in the Greek space. This time it's not Aristotle, but you want to guess for a bonus point?
Mm,
It's Socrates.
that was my guess. Well, my first
Ah,
guess was Socrates, and then I was thinking if it was Plato, and then I decided to be silent.
very
So
good. So you get the bonus point.
I'm disappointing my Harvard professors right now.
All right. So last one. Let's see, 2 out of 5 for now. So let's see the last one. This one I need to prepare. Attachment is the shadow that follows desire. Freedom is the light that dissolves both. AI or human guru?
Say it again.
Attachment is the shadow that follows desire. Freedom is the light that dissolves both.
Is the light that dissolves. Attachment is the shadow that follows desire. I mean, it sounds like Foucault or some kind of postmodern French, like Derrida. I am just going to guess that it is AI because we've had so many humans in the mix.
David. She calls me. She calls me.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a lot of the books I had to like in like the Claude Lévi-Strauss or Michel Foucault or Jacques Derrida, where you're like, what does that sentence mean? It might mean something. It probably does. Yeah, it makes sense. I can parse it. It's like the colorless green idea, sleep furiously, which is human. Noam Chomsky, another hero. So yeah, that was really fun. I gotta go brush up on my Greek philosophers, and also I just read a biography on FDR, so I don't know. I think what's the Winston Churchill speech that's so famous?
Wait, we have a quote from him as well. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. That is from Churchill.
Okay, well, that is one of the best entrepreneurship lessons too. We didn't touch on resilience, right? To still be here. I'm not 15 anymore. I'm not even 15 plus 20, 15 plus 23. And surviving many hype cycles. So yeah, I think that's probably, in addition to doing less, staying resilient is my number
Very
one
good.
takeaway.
Absolutely. That is a great note to end the episode. Thank you so much for joining, Lauren. It was a pleasure to host you and to have that open conversation. If you made it to the end of the video, make sure to subscribe, like, and share with your friends, colleagues, and family. If you have any feedback or ideas on how we can improve, please make sure to hit us with a comment in the section down there. Thanks, everyone. This is it for today. Ciao and auf Wiedersehen from us.
Don't forget to subscribe to the AI to Go podcast.